This is Radio Feminista. You're listening to DJ Morena Libre. Thank you for tuning in today, 2 o'clock on a Thursday. I appreciate those listeners who are faithfully listening to the show. So we are in the very thick of it when it comes to the semester. You probably are getting announcements from professors. Timelines are being due, right? Like things are being due soon. So I am wishing everyone well. Today we have a lovely guest who I'm very excited to finally get into the studio and get to, just chat and sit and talk. And, I've known our guest for 2 years now. And I think this is the first time I actually get her full attention. But before we get into that, I want to introduce Rocio Noemi Hernandez. She is a lovely friend, but she's also more than that. I'm just going to give my interpretation of who I think Rocio is, but the whole purpose of this is to get to know her a little bit more. Educator, farmer, activist, fierce mother, and like I said, a wonderful friend. Welcome, Rocio.
Hola.
Hola.
Hi, everybody on the listener end. Thanks for hopping on
Yeah.
and listening to what I have to say. Hola,
You
hola.
were waiting for this moment, weren't you?
Fíjate que no sé. I mean, like a Leo, I think that would probably make sense. But I mean, I don't know. I'm also a very private person, so.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Bueno, um, I mean, I think you explained it very well. I'm definitely somebody who digs deep into the soil on a
Mm-hmm.
daily basis. I'm a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an educator. I work in the school system, and I get to think about really creative ways on how to bring students into the food system process.
Mm-hmm.
How can they be involved? What brings them joy? How to get them to, you know, creatively and happily stick a carrot into their mouth at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I get to come home and enjoy my family and consider ways that I can be vocal in a world that feels like it's crumbling, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
feels like it's very fight or flight, and I think in everybody's life. But as somebody who's been an activist for, yeah, casi, you know, maybe 15, 20 years, it's an exhausting time for people like me.
Yeah.
Mujer, mother, but also somebody who just really enjoys being outside in nature at any moment and try to figure out what's beautiful, to pause and reflect, and then recycle and start again the following day.
There's something about you that I love. That you are, I think, just over the years, knowing more farmers and just people who tend the land.
Yeah.
Um, I love how we bring in the language that we learn from the land into our everyday, and I think even the
Hmm.
processes, right? Because it requires a lot of observation, patience. Um,
Repetition,
yes, yeah,
failure,
yeah.
the amount of times that seeds won't germinate is very similar to real life. Um, being a mom or being really any other role in society, just being able to pause and reflect, like, hey, the weather and the circumstances around us are not conducive for this plantita of broccoli to grow.
Mm, mm,
So let's just step away. Or maybe let's assess what we're doing wrong, right? And so, yeah, I agree.
yeah. So
Hmm.
I want our listeners to appreciate a little bit more of who you are and your through your educational journey.
Okay.
So if you want to share a little bit about how all this started for you, right?
Okay. That's a long one. Do I have a time cap? Should I stick to like 30 seconds or
No, 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 no.
okay.
A little bit more than that.
Well, just let me know when I need to pause, but
Okay.
I graduated from PSJ.
Alum.
PSJ.
Yeah.
Hey, I have to. It's impossible to not. Wolverines 2006. Um, I felt like at 17, as somebody who had just gotten the residency, very much lost. I was guided by all the amazing folks over at the high school with like, hey, you got to go to college, you got to figure out what's next. I don't think it really stuck with me. I started at what was then UTPA, right? I
Yeah.
still got to make it to UTPA.
Yay.
Aging myself left and right here, you guys.
Oh, you don't want to know mine. Yeah, yeah.
But no, I mean UTPA was great for that first school year that I started. And you know what? Something just wasn't resonating.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel connected to what I was studying. I
Mm.
didn't feel connected to the campus life. Um, that's actually when I started participating in my first like introduction to activism,
Okay.
which is when I joined the Immokalee movement to make sure that
What is
um,
that?
so it's it's an organization that is advocating for the rights of farm workers in Florida.
Ah.
So at that time they were working on the one penny more per pound campaign, where workers from McDonald's, from Wendy's, were literally just asking for one more penny for their pound of tomatoes, so that that population of farm workers were getting more
Yeah.
money to be able to take home to tend to their families and whatnot. The fight lasted years, but that was my introduction, you know, and I think that was my point where I can connect to where I was radicalized a little bit,
Okay.
where I thought, hey, there's more to life than just like going through the motions. So I dropped out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's not something that is for everybody, right?
No, no, no. I
But
mean, yeah, it
but
happens, I think, right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. We can get into that term, right, as
sure.
well.
But I
Because,
came back.
yeah.
But for that moment, 2007, 2008, I dropped out and I started organizing, union organizing with Service Employees International Union, working with Head Start workers. And I had no idea that workers that were within a professional setting were struggling, earning poverty wages, being vocally abused at work, um, not receiving the benefits that they had signed on for. And you know, I think I was blind to all of this, but slowly as I started organizing, it it unveiled a world that is the reality of a capitalist system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially for marginalized employees, people of color,
Yeah.
women, right? Head Start was and is mostly women.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Education,
Education.
yeah, in
I
general.
worked hopping around from different industries. I organized for 5 years: construction, clinics,
Wow.
architects, city public workers, hospital workers, really folks who were just trying to go to work, trying to get the respect that they needed, but putting up with whatever they got because they had to take a paycheck home.
Mm.
Did that for 5 years, understood power dynamics,
Mm.
um, understood class systems, socioeconomical constructs, um, white men and how they impact
Mm-hmm.
industries.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became a mom,
Mm.
you know, and I really, even though I think it's incredibly important for everybody to be involved in organizing with their community, my time was to organize myself and my life and figure out how to be a present mom. And, you know, I just couldn't do both.
Yeah.
So I came back to school, um, transitioned everything that I had to logistically because, you know, it's a mind shift,
Oh, it
right?
is. It is. It is. And my best
Yeah.
students are actually the returning students.
I mean,
Yeah.
lived
Yeah.
experiences they do so much for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Having having meaning with what you actually truly want to do
Yeah.
involves lived experiences, not to take away from students who can get it done
Mm.
in a step-by-step way, the way that it's framed out to be the ideal step-by-step. But that doesn't work for everybody, and it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
So I came back, started studying, figured out what I wanted to do. I wanted to focus on healthy communities, well-being of our marginalized communities, and I landed in agriculture, sustainable agriculture, taking care of our land, taking care of our resources, but also not ignoring that doing all of that involves taking care of the people that are both the consumers and the growers. Everybody involved is a part of sustaining a community and making sure everybody has equitable access to food. And so that's what I've been doing. And I'm comfortable and I'm excited to do it every single day. Could it be different and could it be better? Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much work to do.
So much, and I want to get to that vision that you have. Could it be better? Like I want to see, like I want to know what that means to you.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll come back to that.
Okay.
So you got your master's.
I
When
did
you came back, right? You finished your bachelor's
my
in
bachelor's in.
biology,
Mm-hmm.
and then you right away entered a master's, or
No, I took a pause. So I found some really amazing mentors at the university level,
Mhm.
over in the agroecology department, who are still very close friends. They really helped kind of shift who I wanted to be within the food system, right? Giving me space to figure it out by myself as well. And through that process, I met some amazing organic farmers and growers in the RGV out of Brownsville, out of Vivint Valley, out of the Upper Valley, the Terra Preta folks,
Mhm.
the Salinas folks, folks moving into the Rio Grande Valley that were like, hey, this place is bumping. We know that there's a great agricultural community here and we want to be a part of it, right? And I think it was just like the perfect moment. We launched a nonprofit, and that, again, these lived experiences that taught
Mhm.
me a lot about leadership in the community
Mm.
and making space for others and bringing in expertise that could help us but not silence us, you know. And
Yeah.
that lasted a little while. I wouldn't say it was necessarily super successful because it's not around anymore, but it created a collective sense with a sustainable ag community.
Okay.
And yeah, and then I started farming. I was like, I'm like talking the talk, but I'm not
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
farming. Like I
Yeah.
need to put what is this about?
Yeah.
How do we get our comidita onto the table? And how do we how do we grow everything to make sure it gets to our plate? And there was a disconnect within me, my identity, and I felt I just needed to dive in, so I started farming.
Mhm.
And oh, it's so hard.
Oh yeah.
It's so much respect needs it just I can't scream it loud enough from the rooftops to people to really understand how how much farmers and growers and farm workers,
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
give selflessly and sometimes forcibly to just want to feed their communities.
Mm.
It is a love. It is a passion that I was completely disconnected from
Mm.
before I started farming.
Yeah.
Growing your own food, sharing it with somebody, cooking that same food with somebody is it's life changing.
And ancestral, right?
So connected to our indigenous history.
Yeah.
Shifting your mind. Oh gosh, it's yeah. Voy a chillar aquí
No,
for
but
for the remainder of the
it
39
only took
minutes.
me 20 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
Woo, it's getting hot in here. Yeah, there's a connection. It's beautiful.
Wow. I feel you. I
Mm-hmm.
do. I think I've been through that. I think I'm living that disconnect
Mm.
because I want to dive in, right? But hearing the hardships too, right? And all that comes into play, and I think I block it. But I remember talking to I was in a faculty development with a mutual friend, right?
Yeah.
Alexis Racelis, and he was introducing Shakira,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Preta.
Yes, and she said, you know, when she transitioned from being a nurse to being a farmer,
Mm-hmm.
and that right there, that leap, it was what I was really interested in the most. So I
Yeah.
think, like for you, like, can you dive into a little bit of that? Like, what was it that I know you wanted, right? You felt like there was a disconnect, and you just wanted to dive in. But what was that process?
Like the transformation itself.
Yeah, I think it's important for all of us to know because that's there's barriers to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's see if I can articulate. I think it was a lot of time. So the want to be out there. Working with the soil means you're on their time,
Mm,
not on your time.
mm,
That was really hard for me, right? Because every other job I've ever had
mm-hmm,
or every other role in life has always been you wake up at this time, you go to school from this time to this time, you come back, transition into your older life, you're a mom now, your child wakes up at this time, you have basically everything is timed.
yeah.
That's not the way the soil is,
Mm,
right? With climate change, with factors that are out of our control, it's you really have to slow down and just watch and observe and communicate with resources that do not speak the same language. The soil is not talking to you and telling you, ya estoy listo, I'm ready, come give me your seeds. Like, no, you have to stick your hands into the soil,
mm,
assess the moisture. Then you figure out if it's the right time to start tilling or to start broad forking and then in your process of broad forking is like you have a giant fork,
mm-hmm,
you stick it into the ground
mm-hmm.
and then you pull the layers of soil up,
Oh,
and in that process you're seeing the moisture, you're seeing the organic matter, you're seeing the life, right? Is there gusanitos, is there bichitos, is there movement, is what you did last year conducive to the plants that you're going to put in the ground
yeah,
today?
yeah.
And if it's not, well, then you're going to wait another X amount of time because the year that you invested is not quite right. And so that's really hard to understand. For the first, I'd say like 2 years, I was so frustrated. Like I admit this to everybody because I'm not afraid to tell everybody I'm a chillona. That on the farm, I had my corner. I'd walk over
Oh,
and I'd cry. And the
nice.
reason why I'd walk to that corner was because I didn't want to create salinity in the rest of the soil, right? Like we there was too many tears, and you have to really think about the
You're so
biological
graphic, like
composition.
waterfall of tears.
Yeah, yeah. All these pores and orifices. No, it really was just a game of slowing down and enjoying the process, but also being mindful that Mother Nature is not at your full disposal and she never will be. And you know, it's a beautiful thing, but it's a really challenging thing.
Mhm. Tumbling.
It is because you're like the construct of time does not exist.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
like the ultimate feminist is Mother Nature, and she will comfort you
Yeah.
con todo su derecho.
Te da, pero también te quita. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So going back to you just said feminist, right?
yeah.
I could talk hours about what you are saying right now. I think it's really rich. But I want to also ask, you know, this is the signature question, right, for the show is, what does feminism mean to you? I know. I know.
Nobody can see the faces that I'm making, but it's that's
The
such a
silence.
hard, yeah,
The silence.
the breathing. It's a hard question to answer because I can look to my like feminist influences, like you have your Emma Goldman,
Mm.
like all the books that were out there about her when I was reading at a younger age, like, oh, she's so cool. She was advocating for reproductive rights. That's feminism. You have Gloria Anzaldúa, which is named frequently down here,
Mm-hmm.
and her borderline identity and how that is feminism for people of color, right? Women of color. Um, but if I could define it myself, I'd say feminism is our role rooted. There you go, using that language again.
Mm-hmm.
Rooted in activism that's rejecting the patriarchy. And that could look really different for everybody. It looks really different for me, but for like my 65-year-old neighbor who goes to church every Sunday and likes to knock on people's doors and talk about the importance of community in her own religious way.
Mm.
Okay, that could be her way of pushing against the patriarchy as being a woman leader within her community. It could look different for folks who are just, living the mom life and teaching their children to combat and identify racism from a very young age, right? And to reject those notions. Um, it could look like you being on the front lines at a protest, or documenting the human rights violations with ICE deportations on the streets of Brownsville, Texas, because while all of those are important, every single person's ability and access to rejecting patriarchy is different, and we can't expect everybody to have the same capacity. Um, so that's how I would define feminism.
You live it. I mean, I see it.
I do believe that I live it, yes.
Yeah, yeah, you do. And I think we all had like I consider you one of my teachers in life. So I watch you, I witness you, and um so just so the audience knows, we're both moms, and we
Heyo.
both, yeah, we I don't like the word homeschooling, right? It just you don't, but
It has negative religious
it
connotations.
does, especially in Texas.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but my aunt, when I told her like, oh, we're gonna homeschool, she's like, you're gonna raise children of the corn. Like that was her
Wow.
first, like that's where she went, right? Like right there. I'm like, dang.
But you see how it would hit different if you're like los niños del maíz,
Ándale,
or
ándale.
like indigenous
Oh,
connection
I love that.
to food.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was leaning more towards like the weirdos.
Well,
that,
because
like,
yeah, that's when I mean that's when it's in mainstream, right? Like
yeah.
that's just what's being circulated.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, so I've watched you over these past 2 years. We've known each other for 2 years.
Isn't
It
that
seems
weird?
like
Happy
longer.
anniversary.
Happy anniversary. um, yeah, just watching you. I love watching you interact with Gael, right? And then the life that you live is just, we're gonna play a song that you recommended.
Okay.
It's called Vida de Colores, and as I was listening to it on the way over here,
Mhm.
I was like, this is you.
Oh,
Like nothing's black and white, right? It's on los colores, and you follow the color that you wanna, that you feel good at that moment. And I love how you bring your family, and I've always told you this, I love how you bring your community into who you are, into that web that you are spinning for us. So we're gonna take a little break so you can drink your juice,
my
your
tea.
tea, and we're gonna play Vida de Colores by Aida Poza. You are tuned in to Radio Feminista. Thank you for joining us. And we have Rocio Hernandez. So we're talking about life
Yeah.
and colonial time, labor activism, feminist activism, and farming. Yeah, I think I've I'm so glad that you agreed to come on to the show because I've been yearning for. We were just talking off the mic how our attention, right, just kind of goes everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had been wanting to sit with you and just talk. We've known each other for 2 years, and I think this is the most profound conversation we've had without interruptions and just thinking, right?
You know, probably. That sounds really bad,
It what?
but
Yeah.
but you're right. Like we're pulled in so many
Yeah.
directions.
Yeah.
And when we first met, it was in a professional setting at the food summit
Yeah.
2 years ago at the
Yeah.
university, and we were networking,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yeah.
was like, who is this person and what are they about? And you
Yeah.
had your elevator pitch on.
Did I?
Well, I'm talking about me personally.
Oh, you
We had
okay.
our elevator pitch on,
I
and
did. I'm like, I'm never good at that.
well, you were good at it, okay? And then afterwards, it was kind of a situation of like, hey, we have these similarities. We're moms.
Yeah.
We homeschool children in a I'm not gonna use the word radical, in a progressive way.
Well, and even progressive is weird, right? Like,
Let me have a word.
I
Kidding,
know,
I'm
I
kidding.
know, I know. I'm sorry.
But to that point, like
Mm,
sitting down, having a conversation that feels so raw.
mhm.
Where's the time?
Yeah, yeah, and we should be making more time for that. Okay, so you've told us about your journey up until
Mhm.
right. So I want to know a little bit more about why why farming. I mean, you participated in labor
Mhm.
organizing, right?
Mhm.
But what was your interest in supporting the our food
Food system.
ecosystem? Yeah, food system.
I mean, that's a great question. My thought when I was younger was that I was gonna transition into a role at some point in my future life, that I could focus on wellness.
Mm,
I didn't know what that meant.
mm,
It's just wellness.
hmm.
Um, I went plant based when I was really young.
Okay.
I was 13, 14 when I started to
Wow.
remove meat from my diet. And as somebody that young,
Yeah.
which is it's the age of Gael, right? Gael,
Yeah.
my son.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine such a big decision, somebody that's so young, right?
Yeah.
Without having like conversation and understanding the impact. I made that decision because I saw videos about animal abuse.
Yeah.
And from there, my my thought process changed through the years. And that really shaped my idea of wanting to focus on the well-being of myself and then into the community, right? And so, what did that mean? Years into my union activism, it looked a little bit different, right? Wellness in terms of like access to resources at your job, right? But when I came back and actually had time to reflect, I
Mm.
wanted to go back to that, right?
Mm.
I didn't want it to be whitewashed, where it's like, you got to look good physically and you got to make sure your numbers are correct, right? You got to make sure your sugar levels are this and that. I think that a lot of that is also rooted in racism.
Mm-hmm.
You can go down the rabbit hole of like the BMI, for example, and how
Mm.
never were the bodies of women of color assessed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Yes.
being able to reflect, assess, and figure out, hey, everything goes back to the ground. Every resource we have is connected to the soil. I want to go there. I don't want to go to this middleman that's the hospital working as a
Mm.
dietitian. I want to go to the source. And sadly that meant like having to deconstruct my own biases about agricultural workers, right? My parents as immigrants, myself as an immigrant, told, calladita te ves más bonita.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful what you say. Don't push authority ever. And do something that you're going to make money. You're going to make some good money. Y ya se acabó. Right? Um, not to shame my parents. They did the best they can and are
Yeah.
doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
But it was deconstructing the idea that an agricultural worker job is not good enough. That's
Mm.
just simply, it's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I wanted to go down to the source and push, push the boundaries a little bit and connect. And I think that's what I did, right? It was a literal physical connection of hands in the soil, feet in the soil, and then going circling back to that conversation we had earlier,
Yeah.
making those observations and finding myself. As somebody who is a person of color and who's struggled a lot growing up with, do you really belong here? Um,
Belong where?
in this country.
Okay.
Yeah, in this country, being able to work with the soil, there was that rejection did not exist,
Mm.
right? It was like, hey, I'm your teacher, and this is what I'm going to show you for X amount of years, as long as you give me your dedicated time, right? And that's what I've been doing, and it feels like it's the most normal thing, the most helpful thing was to ground myself in the soil.
We should all do that. It would make yes. Um. Now, becoming your son's educator.
Mm,
When was that decision made? When did you decide? Okay, this. I can do this. I'm gonna do this.
I mean, I children don't immediately get birth and transition into the school system, right? There's those few years where, like, formative years, where you're just, again, that word connection, right? Where your child is literally in your body,
Mm,
right?
yeah, we make humans.
Yeah. What's your superpower,
What's your
right?
superpower?
I'm looking at the only male in
I
the
know.
room. Sorry, Juan. You're great. Um, but yeah, like there's my son. We grew our children. They came into this world. There's those few years where you're teaching them everything.
Mhm.
Your language, your habits, your culture, and not everybody has the time to do it in the way that they'd like to.
Yeah.
And we can blame a lot of things for that, right?
Oh yeah.
Capitalism, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Patriarchy,
Mhm. Mhm.
racism. Like yeah, there's a whole right gender. Yes, because gender is an imposition. Yes.
So many
Yes.
variables.
So many.
And I wanted to I understood the concept of homeschooling, but I didn't have the ability. Right? I was studying. I wanted to make sure I did things in a way where I was going to be able to provide for him, right?
Hmm.
So I couldn't do it early on, but I think it struck home when I realized I'm more than well equipped. I have a very supportive partner, right? A very supportive feminist partner
Hmm.
that holds the space and the time and the love to dedicate to the desires that we all need and want, right, within my family. And one of those was removing Gael from the school system,
Mm.
right? And strategizing. How is this going to happen? How on earth are we going to make it happen to where Gael, my kiddo, is being challenged, but also not in the way that a school system would, right? What are his wants? What what are his interests, right? And I want to say Gael was in 5th grade when I started to notice his behavior and sadness just spike, right? And I'm talking about poor behavior.
Hmm.
Um,
His soul was being crushed.
he was so sad. And I don't know if he's listening to this right now, but
Ours is. Ours are.
oh boy. Well, maybe I won't say too much, but I could
No,
tell
no, no. Just
that
yeah,
something was wrong. And from the lively little creature that used to jump around and used
yeah.
to dance and used to ask me 101 questions, that was slowly just stopping, reducing, and if it felt soul crushing because you're like, what's next, right?
We're,
Medication, therapy, which I mean, every person needs therapy, right? But it's such a young age that's just not right.
well, and it's funny, right, that you mentioned medication. Um, what else did you mention?
Therapy,
Therapy. All this is a cost,
yeah,
right? Created by the
barriers.
very public system
Hmm.
in many cases, right? That is supposed to, where our children are supposed to flourish, but yet they're generating more burdens.
It's cyclical,
Yeah.
and it's over and over where interests that he had a month prior were
Yeah.
negated, right? No, I don't want to do that. That's not what I want to do, right? And it just became almost like it's almost like the system is set up for you not to talk to your children and n- not to identify when something is wrong, right? And with Gael, luckily, I mean, I have one child, so anybody who has more than one child, like it starts to get really difficult to be
Yeah.
able to provide
Yeah.
the observations, right?
Yeah.
To slow down and figure out, okay, I need to talk with my child, or I need to take him outside more, etc. And so in fifth grade was when we really had to sit him down and let him know, hey, we're watching, we're listening, and we think we should make a change, right? What do you think? And we went all out, Silvia. Like, I'm real extra. We made him a presentation.
Oh, wow.
We made him a
A
PowerPoint presentation.
slides, dear.
Slides, slides upon slides upon slides. And we said, here are the benefits, here are the impacts, here are a few districts that could provide XYZ, which are your interests. And here's this one singular homeschooling option, along with other options, right?
Yeah.
And this is what it would mean.
Mm-hmm.
These are the boundaries, these are expectations. And first and foremost was telling him, like, we don't know what we're doing, but we're going to figure it out together. And that's what he chose.
Oh.
And tell me the amount of times that he wakes up every morning now, sorry, Gael, if you're listening, dancing and singing and back to his just youthful self. Like, hardly does he look so disassociated as a child that you're just like, whoa, I'm a bad parent, and those thoughts creep up.
Yeah. And then we blame ourselves, right,
Mm-hmm.
for something we're outsourcing by force
Mm-hmm.
because then we have to go work in whatever conditions those are placed under, right? And then we outsource the education of our children because of capitalism, right? Like that's just the nature of the beast. Um Not no fault of working class people, right? That's just the way unfortunately the system has been set up for us and designed for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and for them,
And our children are bearing the weight of that. Yeah.
yeah, you can look at statistics all day.
Mhm.
Statistics involving student behavior, student performance, um, student connection, and future of education, right? Our country right now is dealing with a really low level of a lot of academic related content
Yeah.
that's it's brewed the political state that we're in right now,
Yeah.
right? We're struggling. We're struggling as a community, and I think a lot of it has to do with that system that you talked about that's just not designed for us to care about each other,
Mm-hmm.
care about our children, going back to feminism, right? Our rejecting that patriarchy involves finding a connection with your neighbor and with your children and with your friends and pushing back um, on principles and values that just do not lift us up as marginal communities. You know, how do we do that when we're working two full-time jobs? How do we do that when we're depressed?
Yeah.
You know, it's when we have four children but can't provide,
Mm-hmm.
when we're unhoused,
Mm.
when we're going through gender changes and dealing with policies that are demonizing us. It's just how, like, the care of our community is first and foremost, and we're just not there. So, full circle, right? Just wanted to care for my child.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking to a friend about defining care,
Mm.
um, and how important that is for us to define care in our lives and in our communities and in our relations. Um, it's like, what do you, and in my teaching, I try and bring in these values, so that, so to create a space, especially my face-to-face classes, just for students to get to know each other, right? And to kind of keep it real. um, the expectations of doing work in my class are real,
Mm-hmm.
but the expectations of you really knowing about your community and their needs is more real, right? Like,
Real times too.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I think it's what you bring to your life. I think it's you can tell that you've taken time to really think through this, and you pause, right? Um, there's this theorist, Sarah Ahmed. She talks about pausing as a feminist practice, and I think you are living that, right? You are, and I think going back to that conversation, right, where you're learning that I think the soil, right, the land,
Mhm.
um, Madre Tierra, like
Yeah.
she's been teaching you about time,
Yeah.
if that is a concept you even we can even think of. But if for us to grasp the immense understanding of movement, right, in our lives, let's just call it time for but there is colonial time, right,
Mhm.
and then there's not.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much parallel.
Yeah.
So much parallel with just connecting my life to things that are happening in the ground
Yeah.
or not happening in the ground, right? Cracked soil, dry soil, lack of moisture, because look at all the concrete around us. Same for
Hmm.
our own lives when we surround ourselves by people who are toxic, who just take, right?
Yes. Yeah. it,
Personal, professional settings, they're everywhere.
and that's a good way of looking at it, right, where which I think for women, especially women of color, it's hard for us to acknowledge, at least it was for me, to understand that this capitalist system is here to take from me,
Hmm.
right? And it's always going to have the upper hand. Um, so I think it's a process, right? That we, I think, have to acknowledge and understand. Um, and I think I think those pauses for you have helped you in that process.
Yeah, I think people hear this all the time where capitalism just does not exist without the oppressed,
Yeah.
right? And I hate to break it to all of us, but if you're a person of color, you are likely in that box, right? I mean, your boots on the ground. You're operating off of an industry that gives you an instruction manual, and there's very little wiggle room. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with one of I'm gonna not going to give their name, but one of my colleagues who farms out in El Paso,
Mm.
and they're struggling, right? El Paso is, it's really difficult to grow food there.
Mm.
And right now they're transitioning into a freeze is about to come around the bend, right?
Oh.
So things that are out of our control. And I think in my role working with farmers in a setting within a public school district,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's not the same as like other farms, right? Where they're run by independent farmers. So we have a lot more leverage. But during this conversation with her, she mentioned she was struggling, but that she doesn't know how to say no.
Mm.
Right? She feels there's so many deadlines. This is
Mhm.
happening. I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do this. And I'm like, okay, great. What else do you need to do? The list is going to go on forever. We have to set boundaries. Same for in our personal life. We have to set boundaries. If we cannot do this, we have to say something.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to advocate for ourselves because nobody's going to do that
No
as
fun.
fiercely as we are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so in this conversation with her, took her a minute to tell me that she just couldn't say no. And so for the rest of that conversation, I kept asking her bogus questions. And she was like, but she still wouldn't say no. And I'm
Wow.
like, I'm going to keep asking you bogus questions for you to practice and just say no to me. Somebody that's an ally. Like I'm on your side, and if you can't tell me that you're setting a boundary, what is somebody going to do to you who is not your ally?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, big old smile on her face, right? By the end of the conversation, she was like, no, I cannot do that because it is not in my capacity. And I'm like,
Nice.
you can't see me, but I'm like cheering silently, right? And we're both smiling and we're like, the list is going to go on forever. We're going to make it work and we're going to put that for the following week.
You just made me think of like theater, the oppressed, right? Where you act out, like you perform your lived experiences critically, and I'm thinking of just that being an exercise among a group of women, right?
Yes.
And just learning how to say no. My Draco got me a little no button. Have you ever seen those? They're like red,
No.
and then you press on them, and they say no, and then you press it again and say no, no, or like it's just like a different, like 4 or 5 different ways of saying
Uh-huh.
no.
Uh-huh.
And he like they found it like in the dollar section or something in somewhere, some store, and then he's like,
Yeah.
"This is for you." So then now I use it for him. Like if he comes and asks me, I'll just press it. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it would. That would be. Yeah, we need to learn how to say no. My audience knows I've been in therapy. I treat therapy like I treat preventive care, right? I go to my checkups every 6 months or every year, whatever, right? That's my
Yeah.
therapy as well. Like I have a therapist. I've had a therapist consistently, I think, since COVID. Yeah,
Good.
yeah. So and our main conversation. Like, Silvia, you need to say no.
Right.
Like, you need to say no. I'm like, okay, okay, every week, okay. Or, whenever we meet, okay, I will, okay. And I come back, I need to work on it a little bit more. It's really difficult. So I think what you're doing is it's so needed. It's so needed. Oh, dije, ay, I was like, los conejitos, me está dando los
He was doing the
conejitos.
peace sign. We're
Yeah.
like, yeah, brother, but he was just giving us a time.
um, oh, I could sit and talk to you for hours. Okay, so what's next for you? Is there like going back to time, right?
So
No, just
my my partner and I and my kiddo, we have a lot of ideas.
Mm.
Similar to my friend here that's hosting. So many ideas that just spill from our orifices all the time, every day, where sometimes they just don't feel realistic.
Uh-huh.
But we just named our property slash farm,
Mm-hmm.
Rancho Revolucion.
Oh.
And so we really want to work towards our dreams of creating community space and it being fused with skate, skate park slash agro, forestry, access to food.
Yes.
So we're figuring out how to do that in a way that's realistic.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, again, going back to the community space and access, right? We just want to create more of that. And so that's what I think is next for us, along with continuing to care for our kiddo
Mm-hmm.
and continuing to stay active in all of our social justice worlds.
Yeah. I've told you this before. You are raising a kid who only speaks in science.
The logic.
The- but no, but I mean, I see that, and I love your futures, right? I love the creation of your future. So, thank you so much, Rocio, for being here. Porque acá ya me está echando los ojitos de que ya cortarle. You contributed awesome songs to the
I'm
show.
glad.
Thank you. Um, and and yeah, it's just we need to do this more often.
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. I think we have a lot to tell the world. Yeah, and again, you're my teacher, so I really appreciate everything you've taught me these past. It seems like I know you more. Like I've known you longer, but
Wow, that's such a big compliment.
yeah, yeah. I hope so.
We're yappers though. We can
Yeah,
we
we
can
are.
keep yapping. Pass me two mics. Like I got two mouths.
Well, you are Leo.
Oh boy. Circle back to the horoscopes.
Of course, always, always. Okay, so everyone, thank you for tuning in. Also check out YouTube. Check out YouTube. The Bronzeville City Commissioners meetings because Tuesday there was a meeting about the task force. The video is long. I'm still trying to get through it. But it's important that you understand what is happening in Bronzeville with the LGBTQ task force. It sounds, there's just a lot of things going on. And it's important for you to watch the video so you can get some context as to what's happening. And I believe student media is putting together a report on that as well. So keep an eye out on that. I'll share it through Instagram once that comes out. But do keep an eye on that. Let's just support our community and you know educate our commissioners with what's the best way to take that task force and institutionalize it in a way that is productive for everyone. Okay, well, thank you again. Thank you, Rocio, for being here. And that's the end of our show. There won't be a show next week. I'll be at the National Women's Studies Association conference in Puerto Rico. Hopefully there's enough people monitoring the flights because of the shutdown. So hopefully we'll get there. But there won't be a show. So I will bring back some highlights of the conference in the following show. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon and thank you for listening.